Hello, Miss Penelope. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for sitting to talk with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Appreciate your time. Let's start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Penelope and I am a licensed practical nurse. I've been a nurse for a little over a year now, but right now I work as a travel nurse.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I was going to ask you about the LPN, but I'm glad you talked about a licensed practical
Practical
nurse.
nurse, yes.
Thank you very much. So, what's the difference between that and a RN, which is a registered nurse?
Yes, so there isn't much of a difference, but there are certain things that a registered nurse can do that a licensed practical nurse can't do. So, for example, registered nurses, like when we get a resident, right, they go and do the initial assessment, and then afterwards, us LPNs, we can go and do like other assessments, but usually an RN does the initial assessment.
Okay, got you. Thank you very much. What's a typical day like for an LPN or a nurse?
Okay, so it really depends on the shift you work. I usually work the morning shift. So when I get in the morning, I will get report from the night shift. They'll tell us if we have any residents going out for appointments so that we make sure that they are ready first. And then after I get report, I do rounds, just go around in every patient's room, just making sure that everybody's doing okay. If they're sleeping, that's fine. And then after that, I'll go and start passing my morning meds. Usually, most cases, if you work a morning shift, an 8-hour shift, you'll have 8 a.m. meds, 12 p.m. meds, and then sometimes you have like 1 p.m. meds as well. And then after we give our medications, we do charting, and some people have dressings. And also, like sometimes a wound nurse will come and you go with the wound nurse and you do dressings.
Okay, got you, got you. So people wanting to be a nurse, I guess that's what a day is like for a nurse, right?
Basically, yeah.
Okay,
But sometimes you might have an emergency. It doesn't always go the same every day.
okay.
So just expect what you expect when you start your shift.
Got you, got you. Um, so, oh, you talked about RN. So they basically do the same thing, RNs, did you say?
Yes, RNs basically do the same things. Also, there are some medications that licensed practical nurses can't give that RNs give. Like if somebody has an IV, us nurses, we don't give IV medications like the licensed practical nurses, but the RNs give it.
Okay, I got you. Okay. Um, did you always want to be a nurse? Did you think about being a nurse or?
Not at all. So when I was younger, when I was in high school, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I was actually in the debate team and I was very good at debating. So I was going to become a lawyer. But after high school, I moved here to the US and then I was doing psychology. But then I didn't like it. And also, after doing a lot of research, I figured like to become successful in psychology, I probably have to go and get like a PhD, a master's, and all of that. So I dropped psychology. Then I changed to social sciences. I didn't like it either because I was like, what am I going to do with social sciences? After social sciences, I changed to business, but I failed math when I was doing business, then I stopped. So I just kind of reevaluated, and somebody told me you could become a caregiver. So I became what we call a certified nurse assistant. I worked for about a year and I loved it. I loved helping the elderly. It was just a fulfilling job for me. But I knew like that wasn't where I wanted to end in life. So I did research and then I found a nursing school. And, when I kept working, saving up, and then I decided to go to nursing school. So that's how I ended up being a nurse.
Okay, very insightful there. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Um, what? So, okay. I mean, I was going to ask you what contributed to it, but I think what you just said. I think you pretty much told us how what contributed to it. Okay, I
Yeah.
got you. Um, so you said you saved up and went to nursing school. How is there anything that the public doesn't know about how to become an LPN? Is there anything that you learned as you took the journey that you didn't know prior?
Yes. So for me, I always thought to become a nurse, I had to go to like a 4 year college. I had to go to like a university. You can go to a 4 year college and then you can become a registered nurse. And then I also found out that you can go to a community college and become a licensed practical nurse, but it takes 2 years. But for me, I didn't go that route. I went to a private nursing school. It's like private owned. So it's not necessarily like a community college or a university, and they were accredited. That's also very important when you're going to nursing school. You have to find a school that's accredited. So I found them, and they were 1 year instead of 2 years. So I chose to go there, but it's like a crash course. They fit everything into 1 year as opposed to 2 years. So that's what I found out. I didn't know you could do that, but with research, I found out you could do that.
Okay. So you said it's either a 4 year college, a community college, or a privately owned institution.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that with nursing, that RN is a 4 year degree. Do they also have another kind of RN that people do, and what is the difference?
So they have a bachelor's in nursing, that's for RNs, and you can also get an associate degree in nursing. That's 2 years.
Okay.
So basically, you're still an RN, but you just don't have a bachelor's. You have an
Okay.
associate degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. So during your school at this, your schooling at this private school, did you encounter anything in nursing school that made you want to, do it much more, or anything that made you want to just give it up and say I'm done? Any kind of hardships in there?
So for the 12 months I went to nursing school, I think for 11 months I thought of quitting school every single day.
That's the first I've
Because
heard.
nursing school, I'm not going to lie, I personally found it to be very tough because it's so much information that you need to learn, because you're going to be dealing like with the human body. You need to know how the heart works, how the respiratory system works, even like with medications, because we give medications most of the times. You need to know like the trade name, the brand name. That's something I didn't even know existed. For example, like Tylenol is called acetaminophen. Like I didn't know that. And those are things that you have to know as a nurse. So it was so much information. And when I mentioned earlier that it was a 1 year course rather than doing it in 2 years. So it's so much information coming at you fast. So you always have to keep up, always study, and always know your information, because nursing school is tough. It's very tough. It's tough.
Great information. Don't scare people now. People might want to get in there.
No, don't be scared. I mean, if you're determined that you want to become a nurse, whether it's tough or not, like for me, I'm a nurse today. Even though it was tough for me, I didn't give up. So that's the most important thing.
So it's tough, but it's doable.
It's tough, but it's doable.
Perfect.
You just have to be serious.
I got you. I got you. So what was particularly the hardest thing for you as far as the classes were concerned? What class did you find most difficult?
So what was hard for me the most is, like I said, it's a lot of information. And somehow, some way, you have to be able to retain all that information. And in nursing school, like the school I went to, they're constantly testing us. You're constantly taking quizzes, tests, and you need to know your information at the tip of your fingers. And for me, one of the hardest two subjects that were hard for me were anatomy and physiology, because that's a whole bunch of stuff, and also pharmacology, having to know like all those medications. So that was tough for me, but I did it. So.
Okay. So that's the hard parts about what was particularly interesting and made you want to keep doing it. What was motivating you?
What was motivating me is I set my mind that like after a year I was going to become a nurse. So that's what kept pushing me. And also it was really interesting. Like we did other subjects like mental health. I got to learn about like some mental like problems that I didn't know of. For example, I didn't know like people can have like multiple personal disorder. They can have schizophrenia. So even though it's tough, it's really interesting because you learn a lot of stuff that you never knew about. So when you're in class listening, you're like, oh my goodness, so there are people who have stuff like this, and it's really interesting.
Okay. What do you think for you are the rewards, maybe financially and even non-financially? What would you say they are?
Okay, so financially, I know that as a nurse, I will always have a job, regardless of where I move to. You can work in a doctor's office, you can work at a school, you can work at a hospital, you can even work at a pharmacy. Like the job security is very rewarding because you know you always have a job, especially during this pandemic. There's been such a demand for nurses, like it's even overwhelming. Like you're constantly getting calls for work. So that's very rewarding too. And on the financial part, you know, being a nurse pays very well.
Okay.
Even though when you're a new nurse, you don't exactly get paid as much as a somebody who has more experience, but still it pays you very well.
Okay.
And that's rewarding. And it's also rewarding because you are the one who chooses, like, I want to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and they pay very, very well.
Okay. So, okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much. So you just mentioned that you don't get paid as much as a seasoned nurse versus a new grad.
Right.
So in a range, what would you say a new grad would make for somebody looking at this, trying to get into this profession? What can they expect to make as a new grad?
Right. So as a new grad, because you're just coming from school, you still need to be taught certain like practical things when you're working. Sometimes it depends on facilities, but you range between $22 to $24 an hour as a new nurse. And seasoned nurses, basically, it depends on the years of experience that you have. You know, for somebody who has 10 years experience, they're not making as much as somebody who has a year or two experience. So it really depends on where you work. But usually when you're a new grad, that range, that between $21 to $24 an hour is usually what you'll get.
Okay, that's decent.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think you've spoken on the job security. That was one of my questions, so I will skip that. Thank you very much for that information as well. So, is there any challenges as you go up as a nurse? What do you see? What have you experienced? You say you have a year of experience.
Yes.
Is there any challenges that you are meeting as you go up?
So my very first challenge is when you're in nursing school, most of our practicals, we do them on mannequins.
Right.
So on a mannequin, your results will always be the same because it's not a person that talks. It's not, So that was a challenge for me because in my head, I had that book knowledge. But when I started, you need like that, when you're dealing with a person is different, people's pain levels are different, people's bodies are different. So that was something that I struggled with a little bit. But with time, when you get used to it, you get to understand like, okay, this is not a mannequin, this is a real person. And with time, you get to understand that. And also another challenge that I had that was a bit overwhelming as a new nurse is when you're in nursing school, your mannequins don't die. Your mannequins are just there. So as a nurse, you also have to deal like with patient death and stuff like that. And of course, when you're new and you're not used to stuff like that, like it bothers you. But as I go along with experience now, I understand that, it's just a cycle of life. They're elderly, they're sickly, and eventually they will pass on. So it's something you have to be able to accept as a nurse.
Okay.
So those are some challenges I dealt with. Yeah.
Okay. And I think that ties into my next question as well. I guess the reality versus, what people see, what people hear. Do you deal with, dealing with family members? I mean, they're, people's mothers, people's brothers, sisters. What are the experiences like? Is it another tough part of nursing that you have to deal with?
Yes. So dealing with family members is actually very overwhelming. So before the pandemic, families could come and visit their loved ones. And it's a situation where you go into the room, you want to give medication, you want to do a dressing, the family is asking you, and they ask you this question every day, like, what are you giving them? What medication are you giving them? You're going to explain it to them. And then you're trying to do a dressing or, change something and, they're in your face constantly. What are you doing? What are you doing? Even though you explain it to them every day. And I kind of understand because I guess it's the anxiety of like seeing their loved one not doing well. And it actually got worse after the pandemic because they cannot visit the facilities, so they're constantly on the phone, asking, how is my dad doing? Some of them will call you every hour. They want to know the vital signs like every hour, like how's my mom doing, how's my dad doing. So because they're anxious that their loved one is not doing so well, they're constantly like asking you questions, even though like you tell them every single day. So that is a bit overwhelming, because at the end of the day, you're still trying to do your job and take care of the person who's not feeling well. But then you also have like the family like constantly calling, so it can be very overwhelming. But we still have to keep it professional and answer their questions and tend to them.
Okay, great. Sounds like
Yeah, yeah.
sounds like a lot, but I mean, we respect nurses. They do a great job. Um, okay, how do you think this career has shaped your life, if any?
Wow. So this career, I'm going to give a little backstory. So I started off working at Chipotle. I was a crew member,
Okay.
so I was working at a restaurant and I stopped that job and I worked as a nanny for a little bit. I changed. And then when I became a caregiver, I think it really changed and shaped my life, because when you work with the elderly, basically when you work with somebody who can't do anything for themselves, it's so fulfilling knowing like I'm able to help somebody who cannot help themselves. I'm not saying like those other jobs were not fulfilling or anything, but when I became a caregiver and a nurse as well, I feel like my life has changed so much. And even this job, it teaches you a lot of patience, because sometimes you work with people who have like Alzheimer's and dementia, like people who don't remember anything. And it really tests your patience. You have to repeat something like 10 times, 15 times, like, but they won't get it. But like you get to be patient, because now, because you've gone to nursing school and you understand like it's not their fault. So it's very fulfilling to me personally. And most of them, they'll always thank you. They're always telling you, you're helping me so much. I appreciate it. So for me, it's really just fulfilling being able to help these people. Like, it's such a good feeling when you know you can help somebody who's not able to help themselves. So I feel like becoming a nurse really changed my life.
Okay.
Honestly, it changed my life.
Great story there. Very good. Thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you.
So, with this journey that you have come to at this point of your life, looking back, you wanted to become a lawyer, you wanted to become a psychologist, and all that up to today. Do you wish you had done anything differently?
No, actually, I wish I had chosen to become a nurse earlier. I wish
Okay.
I would have realized the career earlier, but I wouldn't change it, because going through all those like courses and careers and stuff like that, it makes me appreciate being a nurse more.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And the question that I've been trying to get from everybody, that get some answer from everybody. How has this COVID-19 pandemic shaped the profession in your opinion? I know you've touched on a little bit of, dealing with family members and also the high demand, but what are the changes that has really brought into the profession of nursing in your perspective?
With COVID-19, actually, okay, there have been some changes. You know how we now have to wear the PPE
Right.
and all of that, but it's really been not great. But for nurses, we've not stopped working. I've not stopped working since the pandemic. The demand is more because, COVID-19, the cases are increasing. And it's been tough because with COVID-19, there's no cure right now, So we've been dealing with a lot of COVID-19 patients, and nurses, we're working constantly. Matter of fact, there's a shortage of nurses. So my career right now, I've dealt with a lot of COVID-19 patients. So, nurses are really working. We're
Okay.
working. So
Okay. I think you mentioned to me before the interview that you actually transitioned into being a travel nurse during this COVID the pandemic time.
yes. So for a year, I was working as a staff nurse at a long-term care facility. But then after, like, I reached my 1 year experience, and I've been seeing a lot on the internet that certain states that have been hit a lot by COVID, they have a shortage of nurses and they want travel nurses. So right now I work as a travel nurse. I recently completed a contract in Indiana. So basically we have agencies who will reach out to us nurses and say, hey, for example, California is in need of licensed practical nurses to work in long-term care facilities. Your contract is 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever the situation. And then they send us out there and we work at those facilities where they're like short staffed. And it's a good thing to do because they pay you very well because you're leaving your home state to go and work in another state.
Okay.
And so we go in there, we help, we work for the length of our contract. Sometimes they let you extend your contract if there's still in need of nurses. So that's what I've been doing for about 2 or 3 months now.
Okay. Hearing that, you said they pay very well. Is it, as far as you know, is it the most lucrative part of nursing as opposed to nursing homes or assisted living facilities or hospitals or home health? Is it the most lucrative, you think?
It is the most lucrative
Okay.
because when you're a travel nurse, because you've left your home state where you live, they pay you like your hourly rate, which is usually more because, like I said, you've left your home state. And then they have what we call a stipend. So because you don't have a home in the state where you are, they give you like a untaxed housing and food allowance every week. Because obviously, if you don't have like family or whatever in the other state, you're gonna be living either in a hotel or an Airbnb. So basically, they pay for that.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Looks like you haven't done nursing for so long, but you've gathered some good experience in different places and also with travel.
Yes.
I think that's a big deal. So with that little or good information, what would you say to somebody who is trying to become a nurse or wants to become a nurse, be they new graduates from high school or people who have been in a certain profession and want to switch to nursing? What would you say to that person?
So if you've decided to become a nurse, the first thing I'll tell you is before you go to any school, do your research on the school. Make sure the school is accredited because when you want to go and take your license, your school has to be accredited.
Okay.
And the second thing is just be determined. If you've told yourself that I'm about to become a nurse, like I mentioned earlier, nursing school is tough, but you can do it. So just go there, be focused, study, and you do well in nursing school because the job market for nurses is very demanding. So you will never not have a job.
Perfect.
And also, just know the field you want to work in too.
Okay. As what do you mean field?
So with nursing, there's different fields. You can work with pediatrics,
Okay.
geriatrics, you can work in doctors' offices, you can work in schools, you can work in home health. So you also just kind of want to know the field you want to work in as well.
Okay. Nice lingo there, but some of us are confused by your lingo. Geriatrics,
Oh,
pediatrics.
my bad.
Can you break it down for us?
So pediatrics is when you work with children.
Okay.
Geriatrics is the elderly,
Okay.
you know, like when you work in nursing homes and stuff like that.
Any
So
other atrics or that's
I think that's it for now.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sitting with us to talk. And I know this will bless somebody that's trying to figure out what to do with their life. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.